Cindy Haney here again, and I figured you have not had enough of flying geese. Yep, here is one more method, and I know there's others out here, but here's the deal. The other two methods that I've been showing you, the no-waste flying geese and the clipper ruler flying geese, having a brain block there, all are ones where you're making 4 flying geese at a time. So you're starting with a primary piece of fabric, a large square, and then you end up with 4 flying geese when you're done. That's great when you're working on a quilt and they're all the same size and they're all the same fabric, or a number of them are. But what happens when you want to have a little bit, maybe an unusual size of a flying geese unit, or you're doing something scrappy and you want onesies and twosies, and you don't want 4 of the same combination? That would be quite a waste, wouldn't it? So today I'm going to show you how to make 1 flying geese at a time. The key thing with this is your measurements. So when you cut out your fabric, you need to be accurate. Having accurate cutting is going to go a long way in making these turn out right. And the other thing is your stitching. So, first of all, usually you know what size you want your flying geese to be when you're done. What is it going to look like size-wise in your finished block? Once you've got that number, add a 1/2 inch to both sides to get to take it to benefit with your let's try that again, to take into consideration your seam allowance. So my finished flying geese is going to be 4.5 by 2.5. So my triangle that I've cut is 5 by 3. There's my 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. Okay, so we start with that, with your primary. This is the color of the fabric that is going to be in the middle of your flying geese. Then your squares, the size you're going to cut those, cut your triangle first. Then the height, the shortest side of your triangle is going to be your square size. So this is 3 inches. That means I need 2 3-inch squares. Okay, so there we go. We have 2 3-inch squares. Then we're going to do what we did before. This time we're going to draw a line right down the center of our triangle. In this case, the line needs to be in the middle because you're going to stitch on the line this time. So there we go. So I've got that one stitched. I've got that one drawn, I should say. And in this case, we're going to do this. So here's the thing. Everything has a width and adds, well, a certain weight to it. So when this is not a super fine marker, and depending on what you have, if you're actually using a marker, that width is going to be even more. So right now I am going to draw my line and make sure you've got a nice line and it's corner to corner. If it's not ending up in the corner on one end, you might want to redo it, because that is going to cause you problems where your flying geese is not going to be accurate when you're done. So as you can see, that line has a width to it. So what I found is very helpful is when I'm stitching is that I stitch slightly on the right side of that line. Just touch it, just graze that line. And that's going to be on the side that you're going to cut. So what we're going to do is we've got one block with our line drawn, and you're going to put it on your triangle. And it's going to be angled. The first one is pretty straightforward. Pretty much doesn't matter how you put it on there because it's going to be the first one. So we're going to put that on there. And once again, this is where accuracy counts too, is you want it to be on here accurately. So this is the side that is going to end up being cut. So when I sew, I am going to sew just on the inside edge of that line towards the portion of the fabric that I'm going to cut. So let's go see how I do. Okay, I'm back from the sewing machine, And as you can see, we've got our line right down the middle. There we have it. Right down the middle is where I stitched. Now, you'll wonder what this doohickey thing is that's hanging off the top. Well, that is what we call a leader. And when people started talking to me about leaders, I'd been quilting for quite some time, but people were talking about these leaders. I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? What's a leader? Well, a leader is a scrap of fabric. You know how that scrap I had you cut? Sometimes they're scraps of fabrics that you know you're not going to turn into a quilt, but decent sizes, keep them and set them next to your sewing machine. What they are is that when you're sewing these types of blocks where you're starting in a corner, the fabric sometimes likes to get pulled down into that feed dog. It can be such a bugger and such a pain. But if you put your leader on first, your scrap of fabric, and start sewing on that, and then as you get close to the edge, get your square right up next to it and make adjustments, and then it'll go right into it and you won't have that fabric get sucked into your feed dog. It really does help a lot. So we're going to cut off my little leader, and you can use them over and over and over. So those are always sitting next to my sewing machine. So there we go. We have it. Don't cut yet. Take it to the ironing board, and we're going to see how we did. Oh, we did pretty good. I ironed it, and well, I've got a little bit extra here on the edge. Yeah, so if we flip it over to the back, you can see, okay, my triangle hanging over a little on the edge, but you know what? That's better than the alternative. If you finish this and you found that your triangle was a little kitty wampus funny, then, well, sorry. Then you should probably go back and rip out that seam and try it again. Because what you want is for that to look nice and smooth and kind of line up with your square. So now, once you've done that, then on the outside corner, don't cut your big piece of fabric here. On the outside corner, 1/4 inch, and go ahead and cut off that corner. Ha-ha, more leaders. All right, there we go. Now, put your other triangle. With the second triangle, it matters which way you lay it. If you did that, you're not going to be very happy with yourself. It can make a cool design, but you're not going to end up with flying geese. So, make sure your lines line up so it crosses the corner here with your other triangle. So once again, we're going to line that all up nice and pretty, nice and even, and we're going to pin it. That's a big pin I got in my pile there. And we're going to do it here. Actually, I'm going to flip it over. Yep, I maybe have a little bit more hanging over the edge, but you know what? I think we're good there. So now I'm going to go sew that one, and then we're going to see how my flying geese turns out. Okay, we're back. Got my line drawn, or my line stitched, I should say. And now let's trim off those little babies there, make it all nice and clean. And now we're going to iron it and see how it looks. Woohoo! Oh, I love it when it turns out nicely. Look at there. I don't have any of my under square showing. Looks pretty good. And let's do this before I cut. We're going to do 5 by 3. Yep, actually I'm going to end up probably trimming this a bit. And that's okay. Trimming is better than the alternative. The key thing though is if you're trimming, making sure you end up with your corners ending up in the corners. So in this case, I'm good with trimming this off. My leader pile. Okay. So, yep, I ended up with a little bit more overlap than I should have, but when I line it up with my ruler, Yep, I'm going to do a little trimming, but I'm okay because my corners end up in the corners. The corners aren't, you know, 1/8 of an inch high if I trim it. So there we go, just a tad trimming up. And everything is still fine. And there we go, I have one 5 by 3 inch Flying Geese that will fit nicely in a quilt block or something. Yeah, so there we go. So that is another way to make your Flying Geese when you want to do onesies or twosies and not 4 identical ones. I hope you found that helpful. Take care. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you want to make sure to stay in touch and hear all about the new ones coming up, make sure you hit the subscribe button below this video to subscribe to my channel, Wendy J. Haney. You can also find me over on Facebook. I have a wonderful group called Life Fulfilled, Quilting, Needlework, Books, Wine, and Wellness. You can find it at facebook.com/groups/lifefulfilled. That's where I talk about all the things that fulfill my life, which is quilting, books, wine, wellness, needlework. Yeah, I know. I have a lot of hobbies that I love enjoying, and I like sharing those with everybody else. You can also find me at wendyjhaney.com, or I do have a Facebook page. It's a little more difficult to find as there are a number of Wendy Haneys, but you can always search Wendy Haney and find my mugshot. So stay in touch, and I really appreciate you checking out my YouTube channel. Take care.